what I call the heart of a champion. He always put the team above himself, has made the NBA what it is today, the best sport in the world.
You know, because people always talk about he's handsome. He's not handsome. You know, he's not handsome.
Charles Barkley has never been shy with his opinions. Whether it's on the court, in interviews, or on live television, the round mound of rebound always tells it like it is. And when it comes to picking his favorite basketball players, Barkley isn't going to sugarcoat it. His list isn't about pleasing fans or following the usual script. It's about respect. The kind of respect that's earned on the hardwood through battles, toughness, and dominance. Barkley was one of the fiercest competitors of the 1980s and 1990s. An undersized power forward who played like a giant, he earned MVP honors in 1993 and carried teams deep into the playoffs through sheer force of will. But what makes his perspective so unique is that Barkley knows exactly what greatness looks like, because he went toe-to-toe with it almost every night. And that's what makes this countdown fascinating. When Charles Barkley names his 6 favorite basketball players, you know they aren't just popular picks. They're the players who impressed him, who challenged him, and who made him tip his cap even in defeat. Some of them are names you'd expect, legends who defined the game in their era, but others might surprise you. Players Barkley has praised repeatedly for qualities most fans overlook. What's even more intriguing is Barkley's honesty. He doesn't hand out compliments lightly. If he calls you one of his favorites, it means you truly earned it, through toughness, skill, and maybe even by beating him when it mattered most. And that's where things get interesting, because some of the names on this list are players who gave Barkley nightmares on the court. Over the next 6 chapters, we'll break down Charles Barkley's 6 favorite players of all time. We'll explore the teammates he loved, the opponents he couldn't stop, and the legends he still calls the best to ever do it. And here's the thing, while every spot on this list reveals something about Barkley's values, the number 1 favorite is the one you absolutely can't miss, because it's the player Barkley has consistently said stands alone at the very top, a name that sums up everything he admires about the game of basketball. This is Charles Barkley names his 6 favorite basketball players. Stay with us, because the final pick will tell you more about Barkley than any highlight ever could. Julius Dr. J. Irving. Before Charles Barkley became Sir Charles, before the MVP award and the TNT microphone, he was just a wide-eyed rookie trying to find his way in the NBA. And the man who showed him the ropes was none other than Julius Irving, better known to the world as Dr. J. When Barkley was drafted by the Philadelphia 76ers in 1984, the team was still defined by Irving's presence. Dr. J was basketball royalty, a former ABA superstar who had brought flair, style, and grace to the NBA. He was in the twilight of his career. But for Barkley, just sharing a locker room with him was like stepping into basketball's Hall of Gods. Barkley has never been shy about how much Irving meant to him. In countless interviews, he's called Doctor. J, his idol, and the most important influence of his early years. He remembers showing up to training camp overweight and undisciplined, only to have Irving pull him aside. Irving didn't yell, he led by example. He showed Barkley how to work, how to take care of his body, and how to carry himself as the face of a franchise. One story Barkley loves to tell: during his rookie year, he sat in awe as Irving calmly explained the importance of professionalism, reminding the young forward that talent wasn't enough, and that consistency was what separated stars from legends. Barkley later admitted that those conversations changed the way he approached the game. On the court, Irving was still a force. Even in his final years, he could glide through the air, finishing dunks with that trademark elegance that inspired an entire generation. Barkley said he learned just as much from watching Dr. J play as he did from his advice. The way Irving carried himself, never rattled, always poised, made Barkley realize that greatness wasn't just about stats, it was about presence. By the time Irving retired in 1987, Barkley was on his way to becoming a superstar himself, but he never forgot who helped him start that journey. To this day, he calls Dr. J his favorite player of all time, and he's admitted that every success he had in his career traces back to those first lessons in Philadelphia. That's why Julius Erving earns a spot on Charles Barkley's list of favorites. Because for Barkley, before there was Magic, Bird, or Jordan, there was Dr. J, the man who taught him what greatness looked like up close. Larry Bird. Charles Barkley loves to talk. But when it comes to Larry Bird, the usually brash Barkley sounds more like a fan than a rival. Because no matter how much trash Barkley dished out in his career, he always admitted one thing. Larry Bird was the toughest player he ever faced. The battle started in the mid-1980s. Barkley was a young star with the 76ers, while Bird was in his prime, leading the Boston Celtics through one of the greatest dynasties in NBA history. Barkley has often said that guarding Bird was one of the most miserable experiences of his career, not because Bird looked intimidating, but because he was relentless. Barkley tells the story best. You'd look at Larry and think, he can't jump, he's not fast. Then he'd drop 40 on you and tell you exactly how he was going to do it. Bird's combination of trash talk and execution left Barkley in disbelief. He'd call his shot, literally tell Barkley where he was going to hit from, and then bury it right in his face. Barkley later joked that it was psychological torture, but behind the humor was real respect. Barkley admired Bird's fearlessness. He didn't care who guarded him, how big the ROE moment was, or how physical the game became. In the 1985 playoffs, the Sixers met the Celtics, and Barkley got his first true taste of Bird's killer instinct. Bird averaged over 30 points in the series, knocking Philadelphia out and cementing himself as a nightmare matchup for Barkley's entire career. Off the court, the respect deepened. Barkley has often said Bird was one of the few players who never backed down from anyone. Whether it was Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, or the roughest enforcers of the 1980s, Barkley valued that toughness because it matched his own philosophy. You don't complain, you just compete. Years later, Barkley even went so far as to call Bird the second greatest player he ever played against, behind only Jordan. That's high praise from a man who faced legends like Kareem, Hakeem, and Shaq. What made Bird so special in Barkley's eyes wasn't just his talent, it was his mentality. He proved that greatness didn't need flash or athleticism. It needed confidence, grit, and the ability to deliver when the pressure was highest. For Charles Barkley, Larry Bird wasn't just an opponent. He was the ultimate competitor, and though Bird caused him endless frustration, he also earned a permanent place on Barkley's list of favorites. Magic Johnson. When Charles Barkley talks about greatness, one name always comes up: Magic Johnson. For Barkley, Magic wasn't just another rival, he was the definition of what it meant to be a leader on the basketball court. Their first encounters came in the mid-1980s, when Barkley's Philadelphia 76ers and later his Phoenix Suns crossed paths with the Showtime Lakers. Barkley has said many times that what struck him about Magic wasn't just the no-look passes or the highlight plays, it was how he controlled everything. He was the best passer and leader I ever saw, Barkley once said. He could beat you without even scoring. One moment that stood out to Barkley came during the 1990 All-Star Game. Barkley was in the East, Magic in the West. Barkley went off for 17 points and 22 rebounds, winning MVP honors. But even in that victory, Barkley admitted he found himself watching Magic orchestrate the floor like a conductor with a symphony. The way Magic set up teammates, kept the game flowing, and made basketball look effortless left a permanent impression. What Barkley admired most, though, was Magic's competitive spirit. Despite being one of the most beloved figures in the NBA, Magic was ruthless when the game was on the line. Barkley remembers games against the Lakers where Magic would calmly dissect defenses, then suddenly attack with a clutch shot or a perfectly timed assist. It was a reminder that greatness wasn't always about raw stats. It was about knowing how to win. Their friendship grew off the court as well. Barkley often calls Magic one of the people he admires most in basketball, not just for his play, but for his courage in facing challenges, including his public HIV diagnosis in 1991. Barkley has repeatedly said that Magic's openness changed the world by breaking stigma and showing strength in vulnerability. As players, they were different. Barkley was loud, brash, and physical. Magic was smooth, calculated, and charismatic. But maybe that's why Barkley valued him so much. He represented everything Barkley respected in the game: leadership, vision, and the ability to make everyone around him better. For Charles Barkley, Magic Johnson wasn't just one of the greatest point guards ever. He was the standard for how a superstar should lead. And that's why Magic will always hold a special place on Barkley's list of favorites. Hakeem Olajuwon. Few players impressed Charles Barkley as much as Hakeem Olajuwon. In an era filled with dominant centers, Shaquille O'Neal, Patrick Ewing, David Robinson, Barkley always pointed to Hakeem as the one who stood above the rest. "The most complete big man I've ever seen," Barkley once said. And coming from a power forward who battled all of them, that praise carries weight. Barkley first experienced Hakeem's brilliance as an opponent. In the 1994 Western Conference semifinals, Barkley's Phoenix Suns faced Olajuwon's Houston Rockets. Barkley had led the Suns to the finals just a year earlier, and Phoenix held a 2-0 lead in the series. But then Hakeem took over. With his signature dream shake, lightning footwork, and defensive dominance, Olajuwon dragged the Rockets back. Houston won the series in 7 games, and then went on to win the championship. Barkley admitted later that it was one of the most frustrating series of his career, but also the one that made him truly appreciate Olajuwon's greatness. Fast forward to 1996. Barkley was traded to the Rockets, joining forces with Hakeem and Clyde Drexler. For the first time, he got to see Olajuwon up close every single day, and it only deepened his respect. Barkley often said that while Shaq had power and Ewing had toughness, Hakeem had everything. He could score inside, shoot from mid-range, block shots, rebound, and even handle the ball better than most guards his size. One of Barkley's favorite memories came in practice. He recalled trying to body up Hakeem in the post, only for Olajuwon to spin past him with the dream shake like Barkley was standing still. Barkley laughed and admitted, "You just had to tip your hat. There was nothing you could do." Off the court, Barkley admired Hakeem's quiet demeanor. Unlike so many stars of the 90s, Olajuwon wasn't loud or flashy. He carried himself with humility and let his game do the talking. For Barkley, who was often in the headlines for his outspoken nature, that balance of dominance and humility was something he came to admire deeply. Even though their Rockets experiment didn't produce a championship, Barkley has said playing alongside Hakeem was one of the highlights of his career. He had spent years trying to stop him, and finally got to appreciate him as a teammate. That's why Hakeem Olajuwon will always hold a permanent spot on Charles Barkley's list of favorite players. Shaq. When Charles Barkley calls someone unstoppable, you know it means something, and that's exactly the word he has used over and over again for Shaq. For Barkley, Shaq wasn't just a rival. He was a force of nature who redefined what it meant to be dominant in the paint. Their first major clash came in the 1995 NBA playoffs. Barkley's Phoenix Suns met Shaq's young Orlando Magic in the first round. Barkley was still an all-star, still capable of carrying a team, but Shaq was already a problem no one had solved. The 23-year-old center averaged nearly 25 points and 13 rebounds in the series, overwhelming the Suns inside. Orlando won in 3 games, and Barkley admitted afterward that Shaq was already the future of the league. The respect only grew when Barkley faced him again later in Houston. By then, Shaq was in Los Angeles, in his prime, and nearly impossible to guard. Barkley, who had gone to battle with Hakeem, Ewing, and Robinson, said none of them compared to the sheer physicality of O'Neal. "He was the most powerful player I ever played against," Barkley once said. But their relationship didn't end on the court. After retiring, Barkley and Shaq became teammates again, this time on television, as co-hosts of Inside the NBA on TNT. Their on-air chemistry is legendary. Shaq the playful giant, Barkley the sharp-tongued critic. They argue, they joke, and sometimes they even wrestle on set. But beneath the comedy is real respect. Barkley has often said he enjoys working with Shaq more than anyone because he knows how rare it is to share a stage with someone who truly understands what dominance feels like. Barkley also appreciates that Shaq never wasted his gifts. While Barkley himself was criticized for being undersized at power forward, He respected that Shaq maximized his massive frame and still added skill to his game. The way Shaq anchored 3 championship runs in LA only solidified Barkley's admiration. At the same time, their rivalry never fully disappeared. Barkley loves to remind Shaq that he only has one MVP, while Shaq never misses a chance to tease Barkley about never winning a ring. But that banter is part of the respect. 2 warriors who fought, survived, and now share the spotlight together. For Barkley, Shaq will always be near the top of his list. A rival he couldn't stop, a partner he enjoys, and the most unstoppable big man he ever faced. Michael Jordan. When Charles Barkley is asked about the greatest player of all time, he doesn't hesitate. There's no debate, no hesitation, no, it depends on the era. For Barkley, the answer is simple: Michael Jordan. And that's why, when it comes to naming his favorite players, Jordan is the undisputed number 1. Barkley first faced Jordan in the mid-1880s, when the Bulls were a rising force and the Sixers were trying to hold on to relevance. Even then, Barkley said it was obvious Jordan was different. He wasn't just scoring points, he was changing the way the game was played. The intensity, the competitiveness, the sheer will to win. Jordan brought it every single night. Their rivalry reached its peak in the 1993 NBA Finals. Barkley had just won the league MVP with the Phoenix Suns, and for once, he came into a series with more accolades than Jordan. The Suns had home court advantage, and Barkley was determined to prove he belonged in the conversation with the best. But Jordan answered in brutal fashion. He averaged 41 points per game in the series, the highest scoring average in finals history, and closed out Barkley's best chance at a championship. For many players, that loss might have been crushing. For Barkley, it became a source of admiration. He later admitted, "That was the first time I realized there was a man who was better than me at basketball." Coming from one of the most competitive players of his era, that confession speaks volumes. Off the court, the two became close friends. They golfed together, vacationed together, and shared a bond built on mutual respect. Barkley often joked that Jordan would beat him at everything: golf, cards, trash talk, but it never bothered him. If anything, it reinforced his view that Jordan was simply wired differently. What Barkley respected most was Jordan's mindset. He said repeatedly that Jordan was not only the most talented player, but also the hardest worker. He admired that Jordan never coasted, never accepted losing, and demanded the same from everyone around him. Barkley, who prided himself on competing every night, saw in Jordan the perfect expression of that philosophy taken to its highest level. Their friendship did hit a rough patch years later. Barkley, working as an analyst on TNT, criticized Jordan's performance as an NBA owner. Jordan didn't take it well, and the two stopped speaking for a time. But even then, Barkley never wavered in his praise. He made it clear that personal disagreements didn't change the truth. Michael Jordan was still the greatest player to ever touch a basketball. Barkley has gone as far as to say that no one else belongs in the same conversation. Not Kareem, not LeBron, not Kobe. For him, Jordan's 6 championships, 5 MVPs, 10 scoring titles, and countless iconic moments put him on a level of his own. But it wasn't just the numbers. It was the aura. Barkley recalls the fear in opponents' eyes, the way teams knew they were beaten before the game even started. That, he says, is what set Jordan apart. For Charles Barkley, Michael Jordan wasn't just the greatest player he ever faced, he was the ultimate standard. The rival who broke his heart, the friend who shared his journey, and the competitor he could never quite catch. And that's exactly why Jordan sits at number 1 on Barkley's list of favorite basketball players. Looking at Charles Barkley's 6 favorite players, you start to see a pattern. These weren't just superstars. These were players who stood for something bigger in Barkley's eyes. Dr. J wasn't just an idol, he was the mentor who showed him what professionalism looked like. Larry Bird wasn't just a shooter, he was the toughest competitor who could back up every word with results. Magic Johnson? To Barkley, he was the perfect leader, the player who made everyone around him better. Hakeem Olajuwon was the big man with no weaknesses, the one Barkley still says he could never solve. Shaq was the unstoppable force, the only player Barkley admits you simply couldn't guard one-on-one. And of course, Michael Jordan, the rival who crushed his championship dreams, and yet the player Barkley still calls the greatest of all time. Put together, it's not just a list, it's a mirror. Because the qualities Barkley respected in these men, toughness, leadership, dominance, fearlessness, were the same things he valued in himself. Sure, he might not have 6 rings like Jordan or 3 like Magic, but if you listen closely, Barkley's favorites tell you exactly how he measured greatness. It wasn't only about trophies, it was about impact, about the way a player could bend the game to their will, and that's what makes this list so interesting. It isn't cookie cutter. It's Charles Barkley at his most honest, blunt, passionate, and unfiltered. He didn't pick players because they were popular. He picked them because they earned his respect, even when it came at his expense. Especially when it came at his expense. So the real question is, who would you put on a list like this? Who are the players that not only dominated, but left you shaking your head? The way Barkley once did with Bird, or Jordan, or Shaq. That's the beauty of the game. Every rivalry, every idol, every battle leaves a story behind. And we're just getting started. Because if Barkley's list says this much about him, imagine what the lists of other legends will reveal. This is Game 7 stories, where the rivalries, the heroes, and the legends live forever.